Okay, let's talk about LCK. I'll go through my little intro spiel again. So, yeah, this is going to be me talking about LCK. I'm going to go through all of the rosters, so any of the roster changes they made, my opinions on those changes, and then I'm going to, as I go through the teams, I'll rank them based on how strong I think they'll be in Split 1. A few things to point out. This is specifically a Split 1 ranking. This is not a full year ranking. This is how I expect the teams to perform right out of the gate for Split 1, and then who has like the best chances of qualifying to first stand. So there will be some teams that have younger players who I might think might be better in the future, but who I might not trust to perform well initially when they come into LCK. Another thing to mention is that this video is going to be unscripted and for the most part pretty like under researched. I'm mostly going based off of vibes and what I know about these players from what I watched from them in the last year, the last couple of years, stuff like that. Maybe for like some of the players in blue or yellow, I'll even be relying on just like what I've heard from other people. If they're highlighted yellow, it means I've never watched them play at all. In any context, I've never seen them play. Even Namgung, like I guess technically I watched Bro highlights in Kespa Cup, but like that shit doesn't count. So yeah, Namgung is yellow. And then Ghost, I have in yellow. I have watched plenty of Ghost, obviously, but I've never watched Ghost support. So I have him in yellow because I know nothing about how Ghost support is going to look. If they're in blue, it means that I have watched them play, but I haven't watched enough of them that I'm confident that I feel like I understand them as a player. But yeah, the expectation in this video is that there aren't going to be any super deep dives into the teams. I'm not going to show up with any evidence or examples to like back up the claims I'm making. This is mostly just vibes based. There's a reason why it's on the second channel. It's because I don't have the time to dedicate like a super crazy video to it since I'm working on my main channel. I'm working on the top 20 players per role heading into 2026 video or videos, and those are taking up basically all of my time. So yeah, these I'm just kind of uploading it to the second channel because I know that if I don't talk about the rosters, that people are going to flood all of my main channel videos with comments asking when I'm going to do that. So I'm just kind of doing this so that way it exists and it's there and people can know my general thoughts. Getting right into it, Gen G, they're doing a full run back. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of conversations going on initially where we weren't sure if Canyon was going to stay. Okay. The initial rumor that popped up on Twitter that was freaking everybody out is that they were like, one of either Canyon or Duro is going to leave, and then one of either Keen, Chovy, and Ruler are going to leave, and so people were like speculating a lot about that. And I think that the conclusion that people reached eventually is that Gen G were talking about, or that the rumors were talking about Keen and Canyon, and both Keen and Canyon were considering other teams. And basically, the main thing, I don't know what ended up happening with Keen. I don't know what player they could possibly be considering or like where Keen wanted to go if he was the one who wanted to go somewhere else. But the deal with Canyon, to my knowledge, is that Gen G were looking for. I don't even know if they were considering Kanavi, but at the very least, I believe they were considering Tarzan, and they were kind of waiting for Tarzan to decide where he wanted to go, whether he wanted to come back to the LCK or whether he was going to re-sign with AL. And then when Tarzan decided to run it back with AL and run it back with Kyle, I believe is another player that they were considering, they were like, you know what? I guess we'll just go with Canyon and Duro. My impression was that it was like they wanted to replace Duro with Kyle, and then when Kyle decided to re-sign with AL, that's when they locked in Duro. And then for Canyon, the reason why Canyon was a little bit more of a question mark, even after Tarzan committed back to AL, is because maybe they were thinking about Kanavi or like were in some kind of talks with Kanavi. And then they released a post where they were like, "Thank you, Canyon. We're like letting go of Canyon." And so everybody was freaking out, and nobody knew what the rumors were. And for a while, the rumor that was at the forefront was actually Sponge. People were thinking it was going to be Gen G Sponge was going to be the rumor, and that the roster was going to be Keen, Sponge, Chovy, Ruler, and Duro. Then randomly out of the blue, Gen G were like, "Hey, we're re-signing Canyon. Like we said thank you, and now we're welcoming him back." So it turned out all of that drama, just for them to do a full run back. I think in 2025, from start of year to end of year, collectively, I do think they were the best team. I know that T1 won Worlds and everything, but that does not change my opinion that Gen G were the best team last year. Heading into 2025 or 2026, I don't see a reason for them to not be the best again. Like they are back to back LCK champions. They have insanely precise macro. It feels like they are just able to outmaneuver every single team. They always have better objective setups. They're always winning the matchups they need to win. I guess I should probably quickly touch on my opinions of each of the players. I think that Keem was the best top laner last year. I think that Chovy was the best mid laner last year. And I think that Ruler was the best spot laner last year. So I think they had three players who, for the entirety of 2025, were the best players in their roles. Keen is super stable. He can play any matchup. He almost never makes mistakes. Chovy, when he's on fire, he's the best player in the world, even if he was a little bit inconsistent towards the back half of the year. Ruler was super sketchy for the first half of the year and was making a lot of mistakes, but by the time that we got to the back half of MSI and then all of Split 3 in Worlds, Ruler was super great. Duro's trajectory is really nice. He was like a middle of the pack support in Split 1. Then in Split 2, he moved into top 3 territory. Then in Split 3, he was just like absolutely an elite support. He was great. I expect him to continue to be great. Canyon, I guess, would be the biggest question mark for me because Canyon spent a lot of Split 3 and a lot of Worlds, and the brief stint he had in Kespa Cup being very mediocre. So I know that Canyon has it in him to be the best in the world, but his form has not been good. So we'll have to see if he can kind of like turn it around and be the player who we all expect him to be, or if he's going to continue to be suspiciously mid for a prolonged period of time. Let's see. Apparently, the rumor was that Canyon had a big offer from HLE and was very close to going there, but stayed with Gen G because he wanted to win Worlds with that team. So what? It would have been HLE Canyon and then Gen G Tarzan if they were able to get Tarzan, but then Gen G Kanavi if they couldn't. Is that what was supposed to happen? Next up, HLE. HLE made two big moves. Well, I guess they made three big moves because they also swapped out their head coach. They got rid of Dandy, and I know that a lot of people like that they got rid of Dandy, but I actually thought that Dandy's drafts were way better than people thought they were, and that sometimes Dandy would draft a winning comp and then HLE's players would just like not play that well. But either way, coaching change doesn't really matter to me too much. Their two big roster changes is that Peanut retired and they got Kanavi. And then Viper decided he wanted to go to the LPL, and then so HLE ended up with Guma. Personally, overall, I actually view this roster as a slight downgrade. I know that that's not going to be the popular opinion, but basically, my logic is that Kanavi should be a slight upgrade to Peanut, but I think that Guma is a significant enough downgrade to Viper that it outweighs the Kanavi upgrade. I also don't think that Kanavi is necessarily like going to fix all of the problems. Like Kanavi definitely has his lowlights. He played a very bad series against T1 at Worlds. Even in LPL, like he was the best domestic jungler in LPL. It was him and Tarzan, but most people would probably say Kanavi was better in regular season of LPL. But even in that regular season, he had some really bad stinkers. Like he had this '09 Xin Zhao game that was terrible, for example. So he's always capable of randomly running it down and like selling the entire game. But upside is definitely there. Kanavi can be super good. He's a really aggressive player. He has the ability to put a team on his back and carry, which is something that Peanut could not do. So that's definitely something that HLE could try to lean towards. In Kespa Cup, Kanavi was fine. I think that Guma was pretty good in Kespa Cup for the most part, and I do think that Guma's for sure one of the best bot laners in the world. I just called him a downgrade to Viper because I think that Viper is the best bot laner in the world. Spoilers. Like I would say that Ruler had a better year than Viper in 25, which is why I said that for Gen G. But heading into 2026, I expect Viper to be the best. So I guess that's a spoiler for my top 20 bot laners video, but whatever. Yep. HLE overall, I think the roster is like roughly a side grade, but if I had to choose whether I think it's going to be better or worse than last year, I would say slightly worse. So doesn't matter either way. Even if I did think that it was an upgraded roster, I would still have them below Gen G. So yeah, HLE below Gen G. Next up, T1. There's a lot of discussion about how people feel about Pays over Guma. So I'll talk about that last. I mean, like, Doran, Owner, Faker, Keria, their biggest issue, T1's biggest issue as a team last year is that they were very inconsistent. That's actually been their biggest issue for the last, like, 3 or 4 years, but we don't have to talk about that. Yeah, Doran's a very coin flip player. You never know what you're going to get from him. You never know if he's going to make a game winning or game losing decision. So yeah, he's like a super wild card. Owner, when he's on fire, he is playing like the best jungler in the world. but he also has these stretches where he's not playing as well. Like I specifically thought that for the entire duration of Worlds that he was like fine but not great. I think that at least compared to how he played in 2023 Worlds and 2024 Worlds, his 25 Worlds was not as impressive. Faker had an insanely good Worlds, but of course we know that Faker can have issues pop up here and there. Sometimes Faker makes these really questionable early and mid game decisions that lead to him randomly dying or like losing a lane way harder than he should. He has certain metas that he struggles in. So like he was never like yeah, at least in okay. Every single time I say this, people always like to point out that he's like insane at these champions back in like fucking 1965 or some shit. In recent memory, like the last couple of years, anytime that the meta shifts to like an AD mid centric meta, Faker is not an elite mid laner. So like anytime that like the best picks are like Tristana or Yone or other marksmen, Faker is definitely not the best out there. So like we know that depending on what the meta could look like, Faker could be a bit of a question mark. I think the Keria was definitely pretty solid for most of the year though. Keria would be my pick for best support in the world right now. The big thing for this roster is what your opinion is on Gumayusi versus Pays. There are some people who are trying to assure everybody that the change is fine. There are some people who are like adamantly claiming that Pays is way worse than Guma, and then they're pointing to like the dysfunctional JDG roster to call that out. My personal opinion is that it's roughly a side grade. In my head, I have it as probably a very very minimal upgrade, like the smallest upgrade possible. But realistically, I think it's a side grade. The thing with Pays is that if you're thinking about Gen G Pays, I could totally see the impression that it would be a downgrade, right? I think that when Pays was on Gen G, his role was very weird. Oftentimes, he was the worst player on his team, and his team was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Like, for example, at every international that Pays attended with Gen G, I thought that Pays was pretty underwhelming. Yes, I know that he had a 28 kill game on Callista at MSI, but I swear to God, that game was not a good game for Pays. Like I don't know like what this revisionist history that he hard carried the 28 kill Callista game was. But if you go back and watch that game, every single kill that he got was spoon fed to him by the rest of his team, and he had like this crazy late game throw in bot lane where he almost threw the entire game by getting picked out by BLG, and BLG almost came back. Like in my head, I have the 28 kill Pays game as like a negative to his resume because I view it as a game where he was given all of the resources to carry and he almost screwed it up like big time. So, but either way, whether you have a high opinion of that game or not, my opinion of Gen G Pays was that he was pretty underwhelming. I was never super high on Gen G Pays. So if you're on the same train as me and we're not impressed with Gen G Pays and think that he's going to be a downgrade to Guma, I understand it. And then if you open up Leaguepedia and you're like, okay, what happened to him after Gen G? Oh, he was on JDG. Oh, JDG was not that good. Oh, that means that Pays is not that good. It's going to be a downgrade. But I'm telling you, Pays was insane on JDG. Like he had a massive improvement leap when he was on JDG, and the problem was that his teammates just fucking sucked. Like I don't know how to like okay. Shun was pretty solid for the most part, but Scout was playing the worst year of his entire career. Scout had this like massive legal battle that he was dealing with outside of the game. And then so I'm assuming the pressure of the fact that he was like dealing with like a multi-million dollar lawsuit just like got to him, and that was what was making him play worse. So Scout was playing really bad. Missing was playing so bad that he like essentially retired himself. If I'm remembering correctly, JDG didn't even want to drop Missing initially, and Missing was like, "No, I'm playing like shit. I want to take a break. I'll come back later when I feel better." And then so Missing like pulled himself out of the equation because he was having performance issues. Then Ale was super inconsistent, and he ended up getting kicked from the team. Like he was just straight up out of the team, and they brought in this new top laner named Xiaozhu, who was the top laner for like a 16th place RNG team, and Xiaozhu ended up being fine, but uh yeah, definitely a weird signing. So basically, what you need to know is that JDG roster was dysfunctional as fuck. And throughout all of that, by far the best player on the team was Pays. Like when the team was winning, Pays was the one who was like giga carrying him. The thing about Pays is that when he was on Gen G, he was a very passive player. He was a very timid player. I always got the impression that he was kind of scared to make game winning plays. He was scared to make his presence in games known. On JDG, he completely shed that. He became this like psychopath bot laner who was completely fearless and would step forward in every fight and would try to output maximum damage even if it cost him his life. He was a very exciting player. I think that he made a great leap on JDG, and I expect him to come back to LCK and be a phenomenal bot laner. Like I think that people are going to be surprised at how different Pays looks now than he did when he was on Genji. So when T1 made this decision, I was completely fine with it. I viewed it as, again, I view it as either as like roughly a side grade, but maybe like a slight minimal upgrade, just because I think that Pays has like a tremendous amount of talent when in terms of like stepping up and just like carrying the fuck out of a game. Not saying that Guma can't do that, just saying that I think that Pays has like super crazy upside, and I'm excited to see how he'll look. Yeah, I guess nothing else to say about that. If I had to project where I wanted T1 to go, oh, I guess the other thing to mention is that Pays had a fantastic Kespa Cup, and T1 actually won the Kespa. Well, actually, I don't know if T1 won the Kespa Cup. Last I checked, T1 were up 2-0 in grand finals, and I started stream before game 3 was finished, so I have no idea if they won. I'm just going to assume they won since they were up by so much, but even if they end up losing, even if HLE ends up reverse sweeping them, Pays had a fantastic Kespa Cup. Where do I want to put T1? Do I want to put them above or below HLE? I think that's the question, right? I think that T1 at minimum is third. Honestly, I'm actually gonna move them above HLE. It's just how I'm feeling in the moment. It's my flavor of the week decision. Last year I had HLE above T1, and this year I'll put T1 above HLE for no reason other than just my gut. Next up, KT. KT, they're keeping their top side of Perfect, Cousin, BDD, and then they have a new bot lane of Aiming and Ghost. Perfect had a pretty solid Worlds. He definitely way overperformed by expectation at Worlds. His main issue domestically was that he was so bad in lane phase that he would just find himself in like these massive holes, and he would be a massive liability to his team where they just could not play the game properly because Perfect was too far behind and like couldn't function in any of the primary matchups. Then he goes to Worlds and just randomly becomes like a weak side king. He's like the best Rumble in the world all of a sudden. He's like going neutral in all these lane matchups and looking really solid. I think that he played a very good tournament all the way up until the end, where I thought that his last 3 games in grand finals were pretty stinky, but before that, really solid Worlds. My main problem is that just being solid for 1 month of Worlds does not erase for me the fact that he was arguably the worst top laner or second worst top laner in the league for like the entirety of 2025. Even though Perfect showed that he can play solid, I don't trust him just yet, and I don't expect him to be great. Cuz and BDD, I think they're both phenomenal players. Cuz was playing like a top 2, top 3 jungler in the world at Worlds. I think that overall, over the course of the year, he would slot in somewhere around like top 5 through top 7. Then you have BDD, who was playing a phenomenal year, probably like top 3 mid laner in the world for him. So Cousin BDD, super solid mid jungle. I think that they will remain as one of the best in the region, fighting for like a top spot. Then you get to their bot duo, and this is kind of where the issues for KT start popping up for me. I think that Aiming had a pretty bad 2025. I was not impressed with his gameplay at all. I think that DK were a pretty dysfunctional team for the most part, but even despite that, there were players on 25 DK who looked good. Like I thought that Lucid looked really good. I thought that Siwoo looked good sometimes. And Aiming was just a player who, on that roster, I was never impressed with at any point. So I'm not very high on Aiming coming in. And then I have no idea what the fuck to expect from Ghost support. That's such a weird pickup. I don't know like why they. And it's even weirder because Ghost is playing ADC in solo queue. Like he's like queuing up for Korean solo queue and he's playing marksman. So he's not even playing support in solo queue. So I have no idea why the fuck KT are signing him to play support. It's so weird to me. I don't even know. Let's see. Kespa is 2-1 with HLE in good position in game 4. That's crazy. Imagine if like the entire back half of Kespa Cup are just all 5 game bangers. But either way, okay. Like I said, it doesn't matter who wins game 5 of or game 4 and 5 of Kespa Cup. My decision for T1 HLE is I'm gonna leave it as is. Doesn't matter who wins. Actually, no. You know what? Just for the sake of being funny, yeah. Whoever wins Kespa Cup, I'll just give them second place. Yes, the 2 teams can fight for second place based on who wins Kespa Cup. That's what we'll go with. So, retroactively, whoever wins Kespa Cup, that's the number 2 team. Congratulations to who that winner will be. All right. Anyways, yeah, KT, I'm not sold in their bot lane. I'm not sold in their top lane, so I'm gonna have them outside of the top three. Next up, we can talk about DK. DK have an extremely exciting roster. I'm like in love with this roster. I don't expect them to be like crazy or anything, but I just really like the direction they went with. So they got rid of aiming barrel and they replaced them with Smash career. I think that Smash is strictly an upgrade to aiming. And while I have not watched anything from career apart from his games in Kespa Cup, he looks promising. Like he seems like a super creative support. He was pulling out all of these interesting, unique off meta picks and playing pretty well on them. Um, Actually, on that note, like he had this Pike game, and there's this is just like a completely this is a complete side tangent. This has nothing to do with my placement of DK whatsoever or my opinion of career whatsoever. But there's this mechanic on Pike that pretty much like every Pike main will know, where if you ult somebody and you get the execute, your ult comes back off cooldown, right? But then there's like the yellow bar that appears on top of it to show like how long your recast window is. And if you let the recast window expire, like if you don't recast your ult, the entire cooldown of the recast window gets taken off of your ult cooldown. So if you don't recast your ultimate and you let the window expire, you'll get your ult refunded. Like you'll get the ult cooldown refunded by like a full 20 seconds. Whereas if you do choose to recast it on nothing, like if you're like, oh, I'll just recast it on a minion wave or something, it goes on full cooldown. So that's just like a Pike mechanic that like Pike players will know and non-Pike players won't know. But the reason why I bring it up is because Career played a Pike game in Casper Cup where he clearly did not know that mechanic because he kept on recasting his ult on minions after it was really funny to watch. I was just like, this guy clearly does not play Pike because otherwise he would know. But anyways, doesn't matter. Point being, Career is a player who is like he seems like somebody who's super creative and is going to be willing to uh pick like these crazy picks if he thinks it's the best in slot. It reminds me a lot of like what Lehens would look like because Lehens is a player who would always bring out these like weird off meta picks. Like for example, he had like the singed counter pick into Yumi back when Yumi was meta. But either way, I think that Smash Career is going to be a super exciting bot duo. I expect Lucid to have a solid jump for his year three. I think that Siwoo can have a solid jump for his year two if he can figure out how to get along with CV Max, which is obviously a big question mark. And then Showmaker, despite the fact that Showmaker did not have a good 2025, I do think that there are positive qualities to Showmaker's game. I think that he is still pretty solid in lane phase. Like I feel like most of the time when I watch Showmaker play a lane phase, it feels like he is still a very good laner and then just makes most of his mistakes in mid and late game. And then also in split one last year, so like for that short stretch of time where DK was actually pretty good and they were like 5-0 and were looking super dominant, Showmaker looked really good during that stretch of time. It felt like he could play anything and just have this like massive impact. So basically, I think Showmaker still has it in him somewhere, and I think that the rest of the team surrounding him are all these super exciting talents who have really high ceilings. So I don't know if it's going to click for them right away. I don't even know if it's going to click for them at all. But if it does click, it's going to be great. So I'm going to put DK in fourth above KT. Another roster that I'm super excited for is the Nongshim roster. So they have Kingen, Sponge, Scout, Taeyun, and Lehens. This to me is just it just looks like a super fun roster. So I guess the first thing that I'll mention is that the team still has Calyx. So they're still holding on to both Scout and Calyx. So if it turns out that Scout is going to have another stinker of a year, the same way that he did in 2025, they do have their backup plan. So it's not like they're completely doomed if Scout ends up being bad. But I want to give Scout benefit of the doubt because before, like I mentioned, he spent the entirety of last year in this massive legal battle that was taking up a lot of his out of game time. I'm assuming it cut into his practice time and his scrim time a lot. So I'm willing to kind of like erase last year from my memory and then just blame it on out of game circumstances. I'm willing to give Scout another year to prove that he's still really good because before that, like before 2025, he was really good. Like in, for example, on LNG in 2023, I did think he was one of the best mid laners in the world. So like it's still like very recently that Scout was like a hyper elite mid laner. So yeah, chance he could be really good. Sponge was a player who I was not super high on coming into the year, but he played incredibly well in Kespa Cup, way better than I thought he was going to play. So now all of a sudden I'm pretty excited for him. Something specific I'll point out for Sponge is that he had this Jace jungle game, and I do not think that Jace jungle is very good. Like I'm somebody who is always trying to keep tabs of like what off meta junglers might be good because when I'm not doing lowly sports stuff, I'm mostly just doing off meta jungle stuff. But after I saw the Jace jungle buffs, I tried it out. I was like, I think that this is like not that good. But Sponge locked in Jace jungle, and he played a very good game on it. Like he did a fuck ton of damage. He made it look super strong. He made it look like basically like a super Nidalee. So yeah, if he's willing to pick stuff like that and make it work, then I'm excited for him there. I think that Kingen is a very solid top laner, and I think that he is more stable than people are willing to give him credit for because they still have this narrative in their mind that Kingen like peaked at Worlds 2022 and he's been trash ever since. But like I swear he's actually been pretty good ever since. Like I think he's solid. And then I think that the bot lane also looks exciting. Obviously, Lehens has a ceiling for being best support in the world if all of the pieces click. He was not necessarily great in 25, but I personally want to blame most of that on the roster construction itself and the roster being a very experimental roster. I still think Lehens has it in him to be like a super elite support. And then I know that people are low on Taeyun, and I know that Taeyun did not play amazing in Kespa Cup, and I know that the last time he was in LCK, he was not very good. But I swear that Taeyun is actually like not that bad. Like I don't think that Taeyun is Giga Trash the way that people are making him out to be. When he was on WE, people are saying like people are retroactively saying after his Caspa Cup performance, they're like, oh, Taeyun was just carried by Vampire and he actually wasn't that good. But just to double check, I went back and I rewatched a bunch of WE's games, and I swear Taeyun actually was like fine. Like he's actually like still like a fine bot laner. I don't think he's going to drag this team down to the pits of hell. Like I think he'll be serviceable. So overall, I like the team. I think they'll be exciting. I think that they can fight for a top half spot. Personally, I'm going to keep them below KT, so I'm gonna have them outside of the top five. One because cousin BDD are cousin BDD, but two because there's just some question marks around the roster. Like we don't know how Scout's gonna look. We don't know how Taeyun's gonna look, stuff like that. So yeah, Nongshim out of the top five. Let's see. Did you manage to get the Masia Cup co-streaming rights? I have no idea. Did they announce those yet? Was there like an application anywhere? I have no clue. I'm going to assume I don't have them. I feel like my stream is way too small to get co-streaming rights for pretty much everything. Next team, Fear X. Fear X are essentially doing a full run back. They claimed that they're calling up Daystar, but they were playing with Vikla in Kespa Cup, so I don't know if they're gonna go with Vikla or Daystar. I would prefer they go with Daystar because I'm pretty low in Vikla, but regardless of which one they play with, the point is that they're doing a full run back. This team definitely has some upside to me. I think that Clear had a pretty stable year. I think that he's like a reasonable top laner. Raptor is somebody who I know a lot of people are excited about. I'm less excited about him. I think that Raptor's a little bit of like a Nefiri one trick, and is kind of mediocre on everything else. There are some people who are excited for Raptor. I'm not, but I just want to point out there's some people who are. When Daystar played last year, in the few games that he played, I thought that he looked promising, so I would like to see him play. But obviously, there's not enough of a sample size for me to know how he'll look in LCK. The main talk of the town for this team is their bot lane. So their bot duo of Diablo and Kellen, and more specifically Diablo. Diablo is just a fantastic player. Like he's just an amazing ADC. There's not much else to say. Like pretty much anytime that Fear X was playing really well or like punching above their weight, it's because Diablo was like hard carrying them. I know that there are some people who will claim that it was like Diablo and Raptor, but in my opinion, it was just Diablo. Especially in the Asian Invitational. I thought that Diablo was like popping off super hard. It looked like he took another leap above what he was doing in regular season in that tournament. I know that again, that tournament, similar to Casper Cup, was like only a semi-serious tournament. But still, like I have eyes, I can like watch the game and get a general idea of how serious the teams are taking it just by like watching the gameplay. And it seemed like the teams were taking it semi-serious and Diablo was popping off really hard. I'm like really scared about what the year two leap might look like. He could turn into a complete monster. He could end up just being like one of the best bot laners in the world. I don't know if this team is good enough to kind of support him or whether he'll just be elo held by his entire team again. But yeah, that remains to be seen. I think that the pairing with Kellen is fine. I did like the synergy that Diablo and Kellen had, so I don't mind seeing that again. But yeah, overall, I'm not super convinced if this team has a crazy ceiling apart from the fact that Diablo has potential to be like an all-time great bot laner if he continues the trajectory he's on. I would also have this team outside of my top five. I am going to place them below Nongshim, I think. I would not be surprised if, okay, I'll put it this way. I think I would not be surprised if both Nongshim and Fear X were better than KT, and I would not be surprised if Fear X ended up being better than Nongshim. So if it ends up being like Fear X 5, Nongshim 6, KT 7, I wouldn't be too shocked. I'm just gonna order it like this, just based on how many question marks I have around the team. And for Fear X, I kind of have question marks everywhere that's not bot lane. So next up we have Bro and okay, yeah, it's a roster. It's a team of all time. Look, I'll just say this, okay? The best player on the team is Gideon, and if the best player on your team is Gideon, you're gonna have a problem. Like, I think that Gideon is like a fine player, but I don't know how they did it, but they downgraded all five roster spots. Like, this team is literally pound for pound worse than last year's like eighth place Bro across the board. It's so crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Leave it to Bro to figure out a way to do it. Drag him all the way down. Not even gonna hesitate on that. I guess I can. You know what? I'll do my due diligence and just talk about it. Casting was on like the KT Academy Super Teams, or sorry, not Academy, KT Challengers Super Team. So like the one with Hanbach and Zinni and Hype and stuff. So like maybe he could be good, but whenever I watched the KT Challengers team, casting was basically it was like casting and Wei were kind of the two players on that team who I wasn't they didn't really catch my attention. I didn't actually care about them that much. Mostly it was just like Hanbok, Hype, and Zinni were the players who I was like, oh, these are the ones who could be really good. So yeah, not super high on casting. Gideon I think is solid. I don't think he's the worst jungler in this region by a long shot. In fact, I think that he is better than like a fair amount. But yeah, I don't think he's good enough to carry whatever this roster is. Fisher is somebody who I'm like chronically low on. I think that Fisher is just an incredibly inconsistent player. So, and even when he's like playing at his best, I'm not impressed by his best, and I think that his lows are really low. And then Teddy is a player who I think at this point is well past his prime. I don't expect him to be anything special. And then I know nothing about their support. So yep, that's Bro. DRX. I'm not super happy about this roster either. So I think that Rich is like a serviceable top laner. He can sometimes make stupid mistakes, but sometimes he's fine. Vincenzo was he was in the LCK CL, and there were a lot of people who thought that he was the best performing jungler in LCK CL. I unfortunately can't say I've ever watched him any more than like two or three times, but I know that there's a lot of hype surrounding him, so I have him in mind as a jungler with like potentially high upside. UCal is somebody who I'm usually higher on than most people. Basically, UCal in 24 was on Thunder Talk, and he was the second best player on that team. And Thunder Talk was like a fringe playoffs LPL team, so I thought that UCal was like pretty solid for LPL standards. Then he came to DRX, and I felt like DRX kind of did him a little bit dirty. I know that people were low on UCal, but realistically, DRX had two versions of the roster that they would play last year. They had a version where they would play UCal Lazyfield, and then they had another version where they would play Kiahu and Teddy. And I thought that the UCal Lazyfield version of the roster was way more exciting and had a higher ceiling. But then DRX decided to go with the Kiahu Teddy version, and so it's like whatever they went with that. That was their decision. But basically, what I'm saying is that if I had it my way, like if I just randomly became the GM of DRX last year, I would have put in UCal and Lazyfield. So at the very least, I thought UCal was good enough for that. Then you have their bot lane of Jiwoo and Andil, and quite frankly, I think this bot lane will struggle. I think that Andil is like a bottom three support in the league, and I thought that Jiwoo was. I thought that he was by far the worst player on that Nongshim roster. So yeah, don't think that's gonna go very well. I think it's kind of crazy that Hype is playing in like the TCL or something when there are at least like four or five different bot laners on this list who I would replace with Hype in a heartbeat. But yeah, that's DRX. Then finally, you have DNF. This is obviously the roster that was like super doomed. They ended up only winning like one game. They went like 1-21 or something. And of that team, they're keeping two of the players. So they're keeping Dudu and Pioshik, both of which I thought were the worst players in their respective roles. Especially Pioshik, I thought was like absolutely 10th, and then Dudu I thought was like trading 10th with perfect in regular season. Definitely not excited for either of those players. Dudu for a while was like maybe interesting. Like I feel like there was like a short stint of time where he was like anywhere from like fourth to sixth best in the region. But then the problem was that he literally just never improved. Like he was supposed to be a player who could like improve and eventually become a solid LCK top laner, but he just never got any better. And so now he's just not an exciting player at all. Pioshik, I think, is the worst jungler in this region still. But then they changed up the rest of their roster, and it's all upgrades basically. So Closer obviously going to be an upgrade to Bulldog. Closer was the best player on Bro. He is somebody who can compete with any of the other mid laners in lane, like at any given in any given game. So I think that's a good pickup for them. And then they also signed Dom and Peter. And while at surface value, you could say, oh, it's the grand finals bot lane. I also think that I mean like Dom is like fine, but I think that people have to remember that while Peter did have a fantastic Worlds, like I thought that Peter had a massive glow up for Worlds, it's a similar situation to Perfect where Worlds is only 1 month, and if you factor in the entire rest of the year, Peter was not that good. Like he was trading spots with Wei. Like neither of them were even a guaranteed starter. And I would say overall, my opinion of Peter heading into Worlds was that he was like a seventh place support, and I'm not one to want to overturn a year of being bottom half for 1 month of being pretty solid. So yeah, my opinion of this team overall is pretty low. I'm not sold that they'll do well at all. I'm not gonna have them 10th. I think that Bro is 10th, but yeah, it's a toss up for me whether I want to put DNF in ninth or 8th. I think that Rich is better than Dudu. I think that Vincenzo should be better than Pioshik, but I do think that DNF have the better bot side. So I guess basically this is what I would say. I think that if UCal ends up being dog shit, then DRX will be ninth. But if UCal ends up looking more like he did in Thunder Talk, then I think that DRX should be 8th. I'm just a chronic UCal believer, so I'll keep DRX in 8th. I don't think anybody's gonna care who I have in 8th or ninth. So yeah, that's my list. I would say overall, the way that I would kind of organize this in my head is that I would have Gen G number one kind of in a tier of their own. Then T1 and HLE, I would have in a tier above that. Then slightly below that, in a tier of their own, I would have DK, because I think that DK will have some growing pains. But I think that if the roster ends up clicking, that by the time we get to split 2 or 3, they'll be really good and they'll be punching above their weight and fighting for a higher spot. But for split 1, I think there's going to be too many growing pains, so I have them in a tier of their own in 4th. Then KT, Nongshim, and Fear X, I have in a group together. I think you could put them in any order. And then I think DRX and DNF are in their group. You could put them in any order, and then Bro last. So that would be my LCK list. I have nothing else for that, so yep. Thanks for watching. The next one I post will be LPL. LPL just finished their rosters like yesterday. And then CB LOL is I want to say CB LOL is like 80% done, and then LCP is still nowhere even close to finishing. So that's the timeline for that. Is expect LPL 4th, CB LOL 5th, LCP last.